Welcome to this edition of Careers That Matter. Joining me today is Angela Brooks-Wilson, the Dean of Science Department at Simon Fraser University. Angela, welcome.
Thank you, Stu.
What does it mean to be the Dean of a Science Department?
So the dean is the leader and chief administrator of faculty of multiple departments. And it really, I think what it means is supporting the activities in those departments and all the profs in the different disciplines, all of which are a little bit different from each other and have their own cultures, and just helping them move forward and get their work done and teach students.
So are you an administrator or are you a scientist?
I'm actually both.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Do you have to be a scientist to be the dean of a science department?
You do, yeah. So, there are many different types of administrators in big organizations like universities. In a faculty of science, though, the academic lead, which is the dean, is someone who comes from through the professor career track. So you train as a professor, and then I think often people move from managing one enterprise, like a graduate program, and then they manage a department, and then they'll manage bigger things and lead bigger things. So that's how I've observed it happen to people. So
what is the central challenge in your role, and how do you sort of go about it on a day-to-day basis to address that?
I would say the challenge really varies with what's going on at the time. And I think part of one of the challenges is to figure out with everyone what the medium-term and long-term goals are for a faculty. So, for example, in the Faculty of Science at Simon Fraser University, we just finished our 5-year strategic plan. And that was actually a really nice excuse to talk with many of our faculty members and staff members and our students and grad students and postdocs, and to say, what are you hoping we do? And then filtering to say what is feasible and making a plan for making our teaching enterprise as good as it can be, making our research strong, and thinking about how we fit in the university and in the province, and just thinking of those things. But there are more granular, smaller things that you think about. You think about budget a lot these days. You think about enrollment. You know, all the mechanics of running things.
So, is there such a thing as a typical day? And if there is, what does it look like?
Oh, a typical day involves a lot of meetings and a lot of email. But the days are pretty variable. And sometimes there are really interesting things. So, for example, the Science Undergrad Society is very engaged with the faculty. And so it's been a real pleasure to get to know the leadership of the student organization and to be invited to attend some of their events and to say a few words to them at the beginning and to chat with them. And so there are some things that were kind of unexpected pleasures with the role.
You must have a staff, though, that helps you. What's the size and sort of roles of staff members that you're having to interact with, which gives us a sense of areas of responsibility that you have?
So in a faculty, we run. We have space. We have operations that involve safety, specialized equipment. We have professors and students and classes and everything. And the structure of staff that supports that is in both the faculty office and in the departments. So in the faculty office, we have, I have a leader who is the senior director who is in charge of the staff in the office, and I have an operational director who is in charge of the staff that work in the space and with the infrastructure. And so if there's a flood, which might happen if there's a burst pipe, that involves the operational staff who finds it, who responds to it. And then if there's a human resources task, that involves the other side. And there's I don't remember the exact number. There's a small cadre of staff on either side. But then the larger group of people who make it all work are the 260 professors in the 8 departments. And the departments have a small number of staff in each department, about 3 or 4 staff members who run that. And then we have the 5,000 undergrad students who take our classes, and the 600 or so graduate students who do research and train and are mentored by those 260 professors, and some postdocs thrown in. So there's a lot going on.
So how is there enough time in the day, in the week, in the month or year for you to be able to stay on top of all of this? What do your days look like as far as the commitment that you have to make to be either present or continuing to think about your role?
I would say it's, well, to start, it has been surprisingly enjoyable to talk with so many passionate people about their part of the enterprise. And so it hasn't felt like a burden for it to be a fairly intense job that takes probably more than an ordinary job. I would say that, and then doing research as a researcher on the side, I think I've done a bit less research. And my own grad students have become more independent since I've been in this role. But I'd say it's a fairly intensive job, but it's also been enjoyable. It is enjoyable.
Let's go back to your graduating from post-secondary education. Did you ever set your sights on the current role that you have?
No.
What did you set out to do?
When I was doing my Bachelor of Science, and I went into science because I was just interested in nature. I almost became a botanist. I was very interested in plants and things. And then when I was in my 4th year of undergrad, my grandmother died of cancer. And so I kind of moved over into cancer biology, and that's where I spent my research career. But I never really thought of, it didn't really occur to me spontaneously to be the organizer. I was never the class president of, as a student, but I was encouraged by a few people along the way who said, "Oh, could you lead this thing?" And when I saw there was a job that needed to be done, whether it was a grad program, I would go, "Okay, I could do that. I can organize the graduate program." And so I would do that. And then people would say, "Well, that seems to be under control and working well. Can you do this thing that's a bit bigger?" And the former dean of science came to me one day and said, "Would you consider being the chair of one of the departments?" And at the time I said, "Sorry, I can't, because my grant was up for renewal." And that's kind of an all-encompassing thing. But later, when the grant was renewed, I had thought about it in the meantime, and then I became chair of a department. And then, and I found that I enjoyed making things work in a way that was acceptable so far to everyone involved.
So one opportunity, well executed, led to another, to another. What would you say was the most important characteristic or personality trait that you have that put you in positions for these opportunities to be presented to you?
Oh, I think, it's always hard to assess yourself, because you don't really know what you look like from how you seem from the outside. But I think that one thing that I try to do is listen pretty well. So when someone comes in and they're upset about something, I do say, "What are you upset about, and why is that upsetting?" and I do listen. And I think that helps, that you actually listen. I don't tend to be very agitated. I tend to be reasonably calm most of the time. So I think that people will come in and tell me something that they might be like, oh no, this is bad news. What's going to happen? But they know I won't explode or anything. I'll just like, okay, yes, that is bad news. But yeah, so I'd say just being calm and listening is probably a lot of that.
Do you get people from time to time coming to you and saying, well, I'm considering the sciences, but I'm not sure. What do you say to them that you hope will convince them that a life in science is a life well spent?
I think that people should consider careers in science more. I know that's a different question than the one you asked, Stu, but I think it's important nowadays. I think that students coming out of high school, my understanding is they can feel a little intimidated about science. But I think once you get into science and you learn about how science is not about memorizing. It's about getting really interested in a thing and figuring out how it works and how to do experiments, which helps you figure out more how it works. And so I think that it allows you to follow a natural curiosity in that way. And also science, there are a lot of excellent careers these days. So we're often told that BC is going to need a lot more life scientists.
Yes.
So molecular biologists, and so on.
Thank you, Alan Eves.
Thank you, Alan Eves.
Yeah.
And the prospects for students going into life sciences are really bright right now. And so I think encouraging students to do that, there'll be all sorts of different careers. And students don't know what the careers look like when they go into or if they choose not to go into science. They don't know they can do leadership, they can do human resources of the sciences, they can do management of science, they can end up on the finance side going from science. You can do a lot of different things, starting with a science degree.
I was thinking about when you were saying, you don't have to memorize this or that, you have to just be curious about how things work. And I remember a quote from Isaac Asimov, who said, the great breakthroughs don't usually come in some magic eureka moment. They usually come in an observation where you go, well, that's weird.
Yeah.
And then try and figure out why, and then repeat it, and then what was the mechanism that made it happen, and so if you've got that curiosity and a desire to explore how the world works, science is such a great place to be.
It is. Yeah.
Thanks for giving us a little glimpse into your career and what it's like to be a scientist.
You're welcome.